I think the Trump administration is trying to cobble together a policy here. I don't think they really had one during the campaign, other than criticizing the Obama administration and criticizing Hillary Clinton specifically. I don't think President Donald Trump cares all that much about Syria up until this point, has really given it much thought at all. Something obviously happened. I mean, there's lots of speculation of why this interest, why this military strike had taken place, and of course he said he was absolutely appalled, as the whole world should be, by that chemical weapons attack that took place last week. So I think what we're seeing now is various people in the Trump administration trying to make sure they get onto the same page, as they say here in the United States of America, on the question of Syria. What that means for America, Russia, the UN, and for the Syrian people themselves is now is still unclear. Whether this was a one-off punitive strike, whether they're just going to increase the rhetoric around the need for Assad to go, or whether the Americans are going to actually do something in Syria.
Simon, let's talk about that crucial personnel change as all of this was unfolding. Steve Bannon let go of his job just as the United States was conducting these missile strikes, reportedly because he wasn't getting along with Jared Kushner, the son of the president. Give us an idea of the decision-making process right now at the White House regarding Syria, the policy formulating circle inside the White House.
Well, that's an almost impossible question to answer, because I don't think anybody knows what the decision-making process inside the White House is on national security issues at the moment. I mean, it seems to be influenced by, in part, whatever's on Fox News and what's rushing through the mind of President Trump at 4 in the morning when he starts tweeting about whatever's concerning him for the day. I mean, the institutions of American power still exist: the National Security Council, the State Department, the U.S. government, and so forth. I think at the moment what we're seeing, or what we think we're seeing in the background, is a sort of a bit of a power struggle between the kind of so-called alt-right, which is just a nice way of, a polite way of describing the kind of white nationalist racists who have captured a part of the Trump constituency, and then other people like McMaster and other kind of senior people inside the U.S. administration who actually have real and genuine national security experience. And there's an ongoing battle about what this means, what the U.S. is going to do, and what the implications are for the Trump presidency.
Simon, and as people wonder what's going to happen next, numbers come in, casualty numbers in the aftermath of those missile strikes. The U.S. missile strike on that airbase ended up killing at least 15 civilians. How does the United States justify those strikes, those attacks? Is it more justifiable because they used conventional weapons, because they dropped missiles instead of chemical weapons? This in particular because it's in retaliation of those suspected chemical weapons in Syria in the first place.
Yeah, so let me just be very clear on my own position. I'm not on the side of the Assad government, nor am I on the side of the U.S. government. I'm on the side of civilians in Syria who have endured a 6-year civil war in which they have been brutalized, in which they have had crimes against humanity and war crimes subjected against them by all sides, it should be said, in the Syrian conflict. Now, the greatest amount of that illegal war crimes, crimes against humanity, the atrocities that have been perpetrated by the government, because they have greater killing capacity as compared to even ISIS or the armed groups. But all sides have violated international humanitarian and human rights law. So I think this airstrike conducted by the U.S. has to be put in the broader context of that overall situation. You know, and it did come supposedly in response to this horrible, heinous attack using chemical weapons against the civilian population, about which there is no doubt that that is actually a real and genuine thing that happened. It wasn't the first time. It was a result of many times in which chemical weapons have been used. I'm not in any way justifying the US airstrike, but I think the bigger question is, what is the international community going to do to keep the protection of civilians and the protection of real human rights at the absolute center of their discussions about the Syrian civil war? So I think in some ways, whether this is a one-off airstrike or whether this is part of some broader strategy is in some way not the key issue. The key issue is, how has the international community allowed this civil war to go on for so long?